This is Financially Fit Radio with Corey Sickles from Safe Harbor Retirement Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Cory provides his clients and prospects with the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful solutions to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now, here is Financially Fit Radio with Corey Sickles.
Welcome back to another episode of Financially Fit Radio. I'm Corey Sickles with Safe Harbor Retirement Group and Wealth Advisors. If you'd like any information about today's show, just feel free to give us a call at 614-760-0670, or you can always visit our website at safeharboroh.com. When you visit our website, make sure you click on that radio page. You can check out some previous shows, as well as subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Spotify. Also, feel free to watch today's show on our YouTube channel. Just type in Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors. You can watch today's show, previous shows, and you can also subscribe to make sure that you receive those video shorts that we send out per week. We're sending about 3 to 5 out per week about different types of financial topics, just to educate you, on what's going on, from a financial standpoint. We're here to help and guide you to make sure you have the best retirement that you can. And just remember, when you schedule a meeting with us, every meeting's complimentary and there's no financial obligation. Again, you can give us a call at 614-760-0670 or visit our website at safeharboroh.com. Today, we're going to talk about something that's in the news right now every day. We're going to talk about tariffs, tensions, and of course, how that actually has an impact on your money. But before we dive into that topic, let me introduce to you my co-host this week and every week, and that's Tony Shore. Tony, how are you?
I'm great, Corey. Thanks for having me on the show today. I appreciate that. Had a great week and weekend. How about you? How have you been?
You know what? Spring is around the corner, Tony.
Thank God.
We're going to see 70s this week.
I know. Isn't that crazy? We're going to see maybe mid-60s here in Minnesota, but then they say could snow this weekend. So crazy temperature fluctuations here. But I'll take
the snow gone?
No, there's still some snow on the ground here. We got 11 inches here in Stillwater, where I'm at in my home studio. But it's going fast. It'll be gone soon. But I love the sunny weather. I mean, we needed it, right?
Yep. That means golf. For me, that means golf season's right around the corner. Tony.
There you go. I know we'll be talking about your tournaments and your challenges with your friends and the trash talk on the golf.
I'm getting ready to I'm definitely getting out this week.
That's good. Wow. Okay. That's soon. March. That's good, right?
It is good. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? We've got a action-packed show today, so we better get to it. Where are we going to start? We've got a couple of guests hanging back in the green room. Let's
bring on Joe.
Okay, we're going to bring on Joe. He's been back in the green room waiting to go on. He's had about 40 cups of coffee. I think he's ready.
Yeah.
Joe, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Tony. How are you guys doing this morning?
I'm so good it hurts. If I was any better, Joe, my name would be Corey Sickles. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, Joe's on here for our Medicare Minute here. So what do you want to talk about today, Joe?
I think a big thing to bring up or, speak on this week is different scams. We've talked the last couple of weeks about all the different help, that we provide here at Safe Harbor, and then just the help in general with being able to potentially do some reviews or look at different plan changes. But along that comes, protecting our clients as well, or just anybody out there from the scams. As of 2024, there's 67 million people on Medicare. That's a big number that's going to be, that dishonest people or fraudulent people are going to flock to and try to find a way to take advantage of those 67 million Americans that are receiving or enrolled into some form of Medicare coverage. So those scams are going to happen in a couple of different ways. One of the big ones is just going to be unsolicited phone calls. I think back in the day, when I was a kid, you didn't get a lot of phone calls at home. And if you did, you had caller ID to, kind of see who was calling you and if you wanted to take that call or not. But it seems like nowadays when I talk to people, almost everybody's got a cell phone. That number is just as easy to get a hold of as an old landline is. It's public information. So solicitors are reaching out, through your cell phone, whether it be the actual call or the text message. But with that unsolicited call, if somebody is calling you out of the blue claiming to be a representative of Medicare, that is flag number one for me. Medicare does not have representatives. So they're not going to call you unexpectedly and ask you to provide your Medicare number or any other type of personal or financial information. Another common type of scam is along or with the Medicare Advantage plans. Anybody that you are talking to that is selling or offering a Medicare Advantage plan must be licensed in the state that they are conducting business in. And along with having that state license, there's a long list of rules that they have to follow. But one of the things they do to try to entice you to sign up, along with that potential of it being a scam, is they try to pay you, or they offer you, goods or services that it cannot total more than $15. That is regulated by Medicare, that whether it's over the phone or if we're doing an in-person seminar, if there's any type of meal involved or gifts, gift cards, it cannot exceed more than $15. And or if they are charging for their services. I don't know of a single person involved in Medicare that charges to do what they do. So if anybody's trying to do that, again, another red flag. Or if they're asking for contact information for a referral, being licensed, we're not allowed to do that. So if they're asking, for, mom and dad's phone number, or maybe somebody you go to church with, again, can't do it, kind of a red flag. Also, not only on the phone, but if anybody is coming to your house claiming to be from Medicare, again, Medicare doesn't have enough representatives, or doesn't have representatives at all, to service 67 million people. That's where insurance agents come into play. So, talking about all that, kind of how can you protect yourself? The number one thing that I tell people is not only Medicare, but the IRS and Social Security is never going to call you. They're not going to show up at your house unless you are already working with somebody. If you have an open case, that's kind of a different story. But the big thing I tell people is if you're talking to somebody, ask them for their national producer number. If you are a licensed insurance agent, you have two license numbers. You have the license number of the state that you are conducting your business in. So here in Ohio, I have an Ohio license number. And then you also have a national producer number that I kind of described like our insurance Social Security number. That number is recognized in all 50 states. So if you're talking to somebody, whether it be at your house, at a seminar, over the phone specifically, ask them for that NPN number, and then tell them that you're going to research that, and they can call you back. You can do an NPN search online. Most, if not all, of the state Department of Insurance websites will have an NPN search or an agent lookup where you could type in that NPN and make sure that that information that somebody is providing you is what they're telling you that it is. And obviously with any scam, if there's any type of red flags that you're seeing or something just doesn't seem right, just hang up the phone, close the door, tell them no thanks. Don't give out that personal information. There's a lot to potentially be lost there if you're just freewheeling your information out there.
The one thing I just spoke about this on Daytime Columbus last week, and here's the one thing I would really, this not only with Medicare, but it's with anything, and that is the government will never call you. I don't care whether they're saying they're with Medicare, they're with Social Security Department, they're with the FTC, whatever it might end up being, they will not call you. Everything will be done via letters by all those entities. So that's the first thing to be able to look at when we start talking about scams. And again, whatever you do, don't give them your Social Security number, don't text them your driver's license or anything like that. And if you're going to pay anything, again, they're not going to accept anything over the phone. The government will not. So, thanks for that info, Joe.
Absolutely. Thanks for having
me.
They're
not going to text you either.
No.
Oh no, they're not going to text you. Yeah. Right now, the big text going out is, I guess I owe some money on toll roads.
You and me both.
Yeah, me too. That's weird.
Oh, they're everywhere right now.
I'm like, that's weird. There are no toll roads in Minnesota. Whoops.
I haven't been through a toll road in 4 years, so they're finally catching up to me.
Yeah.
That's great.
Very rare
All
I
right.
even go on one. Yep.
All right.
Well, thanks, Joe.
Yep. Thank you,
Joe. All right, Corey. We have a very special guest for today's show coming up. I mean, Joe's a regular. Not to diss Joe. We love you, Joe. But we've got an amazing guest. Who do we have today?
We have Keith. You want to bring him on here? We have Keith Gangl.
Yep.
He's with our Gradient Investment Teams, who we partner with. He's a portfolio manager with Gradient Investments, and I think it's a great time to start talking a little bit about tariffs. How you doing, Keith?
Good. How you guys doing?
Keith's like, start talking about tariffs. Holy cow. Probably all you've been talking about for the last few weeks, right?
They've been in the news just a little bit recently.
Keith, I just happened to look at the market before we started today. This doesn't air to the weekend. So, we record these on Monday. It's the 10th. And looks like we're down about 2%, starting out here on Monday morning. So, and I would imagine part of this has to do with the economy. Tariffs has to be involved with it. But for a lot of the people out there, let's just go over a few different, for a few basic things, right? Kind of describe what a tariff is.
Yeah, basically a tariff's a tax between two different companies, and there's different reasons why you want to put a tariff on a country. It's like maybe you want to have more jobs here in the U.S. versus somewhere else. Maybe you want to protect an industry. Maybe it's to raise some income. So those are some of the basic reasons for putting on tariffs. And tariffs been around for quite a long time. If you go back to where they kind of really started getting back in the news is back during Trump's first administration. He applied tariffs, in 2018. Those tariffs, to put everything in perspective, those tariffs that he applied in 2018, especially to China, most of those, even underneath the Biden administration, stayed in place. And so now, his second go around here, he wants to use tariffs again to get a little more concessions out of the other side. This first go around with the 25% on Mexico, 25% on Canada, that's related to fentanyl. And then he's also putting another 10% on China. So he's looking to get some concessions out of these different countries for different reasons. So again, that's what a tariff is. And the bottom line is generally a tax, which most investment professionals like myself or economists generally don't. You hear the word tax, you don't like it. So that's kind of where we are with tariffs.
And who do you think actually pays for it?
Yeah, there's three different people that can pay for it. It's actually when they come into the country, that's when you pay for it. That's the actual importer, the company actually importing the goods. And so the three options are obviously the importer can just pay all the taxes. If you're importing, oil from another country, say Canada, and it's 25% tariffs on it, the importer, the company here with the refiners are going to pay that 25%. Or what the companies want to do, the importers, they want to pass it on to the consumer. So that's option number two. The third option is to negotiate some of the price concessions before it actually comes into the country, right? So the exporter. So it's either the exporter, the importer, or the consumer. And every product's a little bit different. There's negotiations behind the scenes. And obviously the exporter and importer want to pass it on to the consumer. But at some point in time, the consumer just pushes back and finds an alternative, whether it's, oil, if it's, like avocados or, veggies, they'll maybe swap to a different one. So again, from the company standpoint for the import or export, they like to pass on to the consumer. But at some point, the consumer's going to say, no more, I can't take it. And they'll find an alternative.
So one thing that you did mention is it does produce revenue for the United States, right?
Yeah.
But how big of an impact or little of an impact does the tariffs really have on the revenue that's actually generated?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of misconception, and there's a lot of mistruths on both sides of things. And one of the things that they're trying to say is that these revenues from tariffs will help fill this deficit we have. We raise about $4.6 trillion between corporate taxes, income tax, and other taxes, and on top of that, a tariff tax. But tariff taxes only raised $77 billion out of that $4.6 trillion. So the tariffs raise about 1.5% of the overall revenue. So even if tariffs went up, tenfold, that goes from 77 to 770 billion, which is a big number. But again, the overall how much we raised is at 4.6, and we're short. We have a deficit gap of 1.8 trillion. So that's kind of what people are trying to fill, whether you can raise income taxes, you can raise corporate taxes, or you can lower spending, right? There's probably going to have to be a combination of both. But one of the things, a misperception is I want to make sure everybody understands is, right now they're raising 77 billion. So say if that even doubles, you're getting to, maybe 150 billion. That's still going to be 1.5% of your overall revenues to 3%. So think of small terms. This is not going to solve the deficit issue by any means.
So this just not to put you on the spot here, but so here's what so it's a very little of our revenue, but when you really think about it, it seems like it's causing a bigger issue with the economy. Potentially, I know inflation numbers are going to be coming out today. My guess is that they're going to be higher than they were the previous month. But, when you look at the economy, inflation, the stock market, I mean, is it worth it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think ultimately, medium to longer term, it is. I mean, if you can bring more jobs back, have, what's really at the heart of this thing is our trade imbalance. We end up, we consume about 29% of the world's goods. We produce about 15%. So that means we have a gap, right? So we can either start producing more ourselves to kind of normalize that gap, bring that 15% up. And if you add tariffs, maybe get that 29% down. Now, if you look at China for one example, that's they export 32% of the world's goods, but they only consume 13%, right? They have a huge advantage. Then you look at other developed countries like in Europe, they're around 13, 14% imports and exports. So they kind of match. I think that's where the U.S. is trying to get there. So in the short term, is it worth it? Probably not. I think especially the misconception of saying it's going to fill the revenue gap, that's not going to be the case. I think there's some benefits medium to longer term, which we won't see right away. So that's why, as a stock market guy and, as economists, people are getting a little bit nervous if it's worth it or not. I think depends on, again, what you can get. Trump's known as the art of the deal. What can you get from concessions, right? Can you bring things down? One thing I'd like to point out, though, is if you go back to 2017, tariffs or imports, from China, we're importing about 21% of our goods from China. Now that number, all those tariffs that, Trump put in place, Biden kept in place, that number is down to 13.5% of our overall. So he shifted the importance of China for our imports. So I think that's a good thing. And when he did that, China and Mexico actually went up. They went up from 13 to about 15 and about 11 to 13%. So we're actually more dependent on more of our co-neighbors, which I think is a better thing. So, a long-winded answer to your question, is it worth it? I'm not so sure right now. Market certainly thinks it's nervous. But again, you hear these numbers of 25% on both Canada. Those numbers I think are overstated. I don't think you've already seen exceptions for the autos, for your veggies and stuff like that. So I think that number at the end of the day shakes out a lot lower. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
I would hope so. I think that's the one. I don't think anybody has a problem with trying to balance out the trade deficit with China. I mean, even the Democratic administrations and the Republican administrations were on board with that and tariffs for China. But the big surprise, I think, was Canada and a little bit Mexico. But if I could throw my 2 cents in on that, Corey and Keith, my father owns a farm. And the farmer that farms his land for him, my dad is he's in long-term care, but I talked to him and I've looked into this, and the problem that the farmers have with it, you mentioned we have a trade imbalance. We don't export as much as we import, and that's obvious. We're consumers. But the one thing that we do export a lot of, probably the biggest thing, is soybeans and corn. A lot of countries rely on us for that and export soybeans and corn. And the problem is it's not just the trade. We're talking about the tariffs that Trump's doing, but he started a trade war. And so they're putting tariffs on our goods coming in, which is decreasing how much corn and soybeans they'll buy. And so that's going to really, I think the Trump administration is going to really, because those people voted for Trump. The farmers in the Midwest here vote, a lot of them, I think it's 80% of farmers voted for Trump or more, 90. But they're not happy right now. I will tell you that. So I hope that works out. And Trump, I think, is using it for more of a, like you say, maybe he's using it for leverage to try to negotiate. But, I mean, we have to look at what they do with tariffs on stuff coming, that we export too, right?
Yeah, sure. Hey, Keith, how does this, you manage portfolios, right? And, a lot of the ones a couple of the ones that with the contrarian choice and the core select that you actually do with gradient, a lot of those are individual stocks that you end up buying, right? So when you're sitting there and you're looking at what stocks to potentially buy and sell, how does this tariffs kind of impact on your thoughts on how you're going to maybe purchase or sell certain companies?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously with the tariffs, the whole market's kind of getting reset a little bit. I mean, coming into this, let's take another step back. Because if you look at 23 and 24, the stock market, the S&P 500 was up, 25 and 26%. And so now this year, kind of what we talked about, bringing an umbrella, kind of that more normalized year, 8 to 10%. We started off the year pretty hot. Everybody's excited about the new administration, different things going on. Earnings is all good. Unemployment's good. We're up 4 or 5%. And to your point, now we're seeing some volatility recently. I think it's, it revolves around the tariffs. And so now we're, S&P year to date, it's down about 1.5%. The valuation on the overall market was getting pretty, full. When we look at valuation, how I look at, the overall stock market, individual stocks was getting pretty full. It was at about 21 times forward PE. Now with the market coming down, you're getting closer to 20 times. There's a lot of individual names. I guess that's kind of what you're getting at that have become more interesting now that I think they're high quality companies. Earnings haven't been impacted by tariffs. Oh, and by the way, they're cheaper. You're 10%, 15% cheaper than they were, a few weeks ago. And I think that's actually, started to be a buying point. Whereas before I was struggling to find different ideas for my different portfolios. But I think with this pullback, there's a lot of stocks that are kind of getting sold off with the overall market sell down. And some of the names that we kind of like that I think that aren't that tariff related are a name like, Meta, Facebook, they're not to what Tony was talking about. They're not farm, they're not ag, something like that, where a tariff could impact them and kind of could end up selling, less of your goods overseas. Or I don't think that really impacts a company like Meta. Amazon's another one. I mean, they have the retail side of things a little bit. Maybe some of their stuff that they put through the pipeline gets some tariffs, but then your technology piece, I mean, I think these are fantastic opportunities for stocks that pulled back 10, 15%. So as a portfolio manager, I'm actually getting excited that we're seeing some opportunities that I think are buy for medium to long term, right? There can be some chop here in the near term. And again, that kind of fits with our thesis of kind of, just as like you do, we have these other, buffered strategies. You do a great job with those. And it's just like those kind of protect you from the downside. And that's kind of where we're in right now. I mean, taking a step back, we're only down 6, 7, 8% maybe from our recent highs, which was an all-time high. So it's pullbacks are normal. So these are when me as a portfolio manager can kind of get excited. It's like, there's some opportunities that are on sale, which I think are, unduly sold off due to, the perception of tariff. So there's some opportunities in the market right now.
So what do you think about Tesla as an opportunity right now?
Yeah, that stock's almost down 50%. Now that's the one name I haven't owned in the last several years. Is the reason I haven't owned it, it's been pure valuation. It's been a very, very expensive stock. Elon Musk, whether you like him or hate him, he's a visionary. He drove the EV space. The EV space would not be where it is today without Elon Musk's vision. Now, the reason I haven't owned the stock is just purely because of valuation. Now, that being said, the stock has retreated 50%. Now it's kind of getting a little bit more back on my radar. It's like, valuation is reasonable. The one thing I would caveat is they own the EV market when you back up a few years. Now there's competition. So I think that's part of it. The numbers haven't been going up like they kind of what people thought they were a few years ago. Because again, you've got, even the American-made companies are actually producing EV cars, and you got, BMW, Mercedes, all these different competition. So they won't own 90, 100% of the space anymore. Maybe it's 50. They actually, their overall is actually just dipped below 50% of market share. So they're actually slowing on that. Now, the thing to get excited about is robotaxi, their battery storage technology. Again, they created the EV space, and they're probably going to be the one that's going to create this battery storage side and the robotaxi. I just think, the timing of getting that right and when to get back into the stock, that's going to be tricky, right? Because those probably are still out a few years. So you're going to be taking a leap of faith on that because your EV, I think competition's still there right now. But again, a stock that's pulled 50% back from its all-time high, while not cheap, certainly now it's back on my radar here. And again, I think this morning it was down another maybe 5%. So it's certainly a name to put on my radar list.
Yep. Well, I think we're about out of time, aren't we, Tony?
Yeah, we're out of time,
Yeah.
but great show today. Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Keith, and give us an update on tariffs and some of the way that you choose stocks and things like that as well.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yep.
All right. We'll see you, Keith. Thanks. Well, Corey, great show. Let our listeners know before we go how they can get a hold of you.
You can visit or you can give us a call at 614-760-0670, or you can always visit us online at safeharboroh.com. Again, just remember, when you do schedule a meeting with us, the meeting's complimentary. There's no financial obligation. We're here to help and guide you just to make sure that you're going to have the retirement that you want. And just like, with today's show, part of this is all about allocation and risk and being able to manage all that. And, that's one of the things we do for our clients. So we're here to help and guide you to make sure you have the best retirement that you can.
All right. Thanks, Corey. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Financially Fit Radio with our host, Corey Sickles. Thank you for listening to Financially Fit Radio. Don't pay too much for taxes or retire without a sound income plan. For more information, contact Corey Sickles at Safe Harbor Retirement Group. Call 614-760-0670 or visit their website at financiallyfitoh.com.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.